What's up? How you doing? Here we are. Beautiful night tonight. Beautiful night. Reading a book, Boy Scouts of America. It's an oldie but a goodie. This one is, it's got to be old because this book is $1.25 the price. And it says totally printing since 1910 to 1924. So this is the 6th edition, and it was released February 1970. 750,000 copies. That's when the Boy Scouts were popular. So we'll talk about that in a minute. I have some fresh tea here. Lipton tea. I love Lipton tea. Delicious. So anyway, a lot of interesting things in here. You know, in my time, I wanted to become a Boy Scout, but you know, I putting it off. Didn't have anybody to say, hey, I'm going too, you want to go together? So it was just a dream of mine to do that. And I guess you start off with the Cub Scouts, but you don't have to. I guess you can jump into the Boy Scouts immediately. So we had this, my grandmother lived close, but not close, but you know, probably about 3.5, 4 miles away from where we lived. And we'd go there and visit once in a while. On the way back, I remember looking, and there was the headquarters, or one of the main places for the Boy Scouts of America. And I thought it was so cool. I go, one day I want to go and join this place. You know, to me it was like what I enjoyed, you know, that the outdoors, hiking, the survival stuff in the woods, on a mountain. I've been fascinated with that stuff ever since I was about that big. I'd spend a lot of time in the state of Maine, and there was a forest in this area that we used to stay at, and I would go by myself at an early age, 4 or 5 years old. Parents didn't care back then. They would say, go play, go. And I would disappear into the forest. It was huge. And every time I would go into the forest, there was always something new I discovered. Always something new. I was going to the forest for years, and one day I said, well, what about if I go this way? And I went that way, and I found another area that I didn't know existed. And then another time I said, what about if I go that way? And I went that way, and I found a waterfalls. Is it a waterfall or waterfalls? So I found that, and then I would go there and kick back. There were these big rocks. I would sit on the rocks, just watch the water go over, especially in the fall time, because that happens to be my favorite time of the year. The other times are great, but fall, a little bit extra. And I always wanted to go into that Boy Scouts place that we would pass by and sign up, you know. But I wanted to do, I don't know, the stuff like in, I guess they did that stuff, the stuff that's in the book. So this one has how to read a compass. So I bought this book used because they don't sell them new anymore like this. And there's a, what is it, tenderfoot score, my tenderfoot score, whatever that means. And this person here puts the date, and the date is 1971, 11/2/71. The initials are CA, and some of these say Bill, something like that. But anyway, Scouts honor, really cool stuff. Cool. They don't do stuff like that anymore. Everybody, you know, found something that offends them about this, and they don't do it anymore. So, you know, I don't know. I think there may be some kids that go, but this was in the old days. Forget about the scandals for a minute, just for a minute. In the old days, this was a kind of like a, you know, a thing you were proud of if you completed the whole thing. You know, a lot of people would put it on their resume. Did the, you know, Boy Scouts thing. I was a, what's the top thing here? Eagle Scout or something. But they had exercises, sit-ups, push-ups. They had the height chart. They had food to eat. Your physical here. Just really cool stuff. Big on the that Constitution back here. The American Creed. Our democracy. I didn't even know they talked about that kind of stuff. I just thought it was about, you know, going out into the woods and having a good time with the fishing and the, I don't know if they hunted, but. And then here they have religious programs for scouts. I don't know what that is, but tons of good, cool stuff. And then, you know, you had the scout leaders who ruined it all. Not all the scout leaders, obviously, but there were a few in there that, you know, would join the Boy Scouts, and they would do things, and that ruined it. They ruined it. It's always the few that ruin it. But this was such a cool organization. How to set up a tent, how to backpack. Look, they got the packs on their backs. How to pack things. And this basically taught you how to become an adult. It taught you all that stuff. Kind of like, you know, back in the old days they had home economics in school. They don't have that anymore. Look at this, how to fish, how to know nature, how to use a compass, which I think I said earlier. What is this thing here? How to signal. All kind of cool stuff. Most people don't know any of this stuff anymore because nobody teaches this. So I was a huge fan of this organization as a kid. I never joined. I wish I had. You know, but I did my own forest stuff. I had a dream one time. I don't know how old I was. It was probably like 12. And that area where the Boy Scouts of America, that headquarters, or one of the headquarters. You can only have one headquarters, but one of the main places. The dream is set in that location, and I'm running. Yeah, that's a mama's boy wannabe. Sounds like he's got a little mini bike. Anyway, the dream is me on the run. I'm on the run, and I'm being chased by the law. In the dream, it doesn't state what I did. I don't know. It could have been anything. I could have been, you know, shoplifting gum. But anyway, the whole entire police department in my area is looking for me. And I'm running, and it feels real. You know, in my dream, I never once say, well, this is just a dream. You're going to wake up. Don't worry about it. So I'm running, and I'm afraid I'm going to be identified. I'm 12 years old in this dream. And then all of a sudden, I end up in the Boy Scouts of America building on the outside. And the cops are closing in. And I could see them from a distance, and there's cars in front there, the Boy Scouts of America driveway, and I spin around like I'm putting out a fire around my body underneath one of the cars, and I'm there, and I can feel myself like almost panicking because I could see the police officer's feet walking next to the car and around it, and I'm like, I'm here, they're gonna notice me. And my heart is pounding in the dream, and it feels as real as I am right now making this video. That's how real it felt. I didn't know it was a dream. I didn't know it was a dream. And my heart is racing. I'm doing like about 140 beats per minute. And cops, now there's a bunch of cops. Now there's like, 5 or 6 cops going around the same vehicle. And I go, they're gonna get me. I can just almost imagine an arm reaching under, and then I wake up. and they didn't get me. And I was like, oh, that was just a dream. There's a lot of times I had a dream last night that was one of those. I'm glad it was just a dream. So I was driving a big car, might have been the Suburban. I think it was a Suburban. I had my daughter. Both my daughters were in the car, and I take a right. I'm going up a hill in the dream, and all of a sudden there's a little small station wagon. It's parked, taking most of the street up, and there's an old woman in the back emptying grocery bags. And I, for some reason, tapped the front of the car with my car, and that car goes back like 20 feet from that little tap. And I go, no, I ran over the lady with her car, and I go around and she's okay, but she's angry. And then she's like, limping, and things are getting worse as the dream is going. It's like now all of a sudden, her head hurts, and I'm apologizing. I go, I didn't mean to hit the car, and I didn't know you were on the other side. Anyway, from all of that, I woke up. It was time to wake up anyway, but I woke up, and I don't know what happened. So, my dreams, when I have dreams like that, they seem as real as now. And this is not a dream. I don't think it is. But anyway, that was the dream I had that had the Boy Scouts of America in it. But this organization in the 40s and the 50s was so cool. Every kid, like a Leave It to Beaver type, they wanted to be a Boy Scout. And then at the end you became, what does it say? They tell you about morality, which is subjective. Some people, it depends on what generation you're from and what your, views are and life experiences are. But yeah, they taught all sorts of things. How to wash Mama's boy right there. That's a mama's boy with a lot of experience. How to wash your feet, your hair, your teeth, your eyes, take care of your ears, and how to get some sun and fresh air. That noise. And then they have exercises in here. Sit-ups, pull-ups, the 50-yard dash, 600-yard run. And then on this side, you get to keep your scores, keep track of your improvement, and then how to do the canoe. Lots of cool stuff. Growing into manhood, checking your machine, your body. So, if you think about it, this is kind of like Special Forces training for the young kid, right? They show you all the stuff, how to survive in all kind of situations, but for a kid. How to take care of your axe, your saw, how to use a saw, how to identify tracks. I don't know. I see tracks. I don't know what those are. Talks about snakes, raccoons, diamondback, elf, fishing. I look at this and I go, everybody should have been a Boy Scout in the old days, and they probably were, But what a cool thing it was. I know there's a dark side to it. I'm talking about the bright side. The bright side. That's what I'm talking about right now. Yeah, I'm gonna read this book. A lot of interesting things in here. Maybe that'll make me half a Boy Scout. So, yeah, that's like, a precursor to the Green Berets or something. Delicious, delicious. I love the tea. So today was beautiful, nice day. It was one of those nice warm fall days, and you know, it was like a little bit breezy at times, but that nice breeze, you know, that nice breeze that comes by, feels like from a tropical island. That's what it felt like. So it's almost November. Got Halloween coming up. That was a pretty big deal when I was a kid there, the Halloween. Everybody was excited. They'd go to CVS and they'd get those cheap vinyl outfits with the hard plastic mask. And then at nighttime you'd put it on. Somebody would tie the back for you, and then you'd go out with your friends, trick or treat. It was pretty cool, you know. At school you'd have that Halloween party. Everybody would bring in something like, you know, M&Ms, Reese's, all that, and then everybody would walk around and pass them around. Your desk would be full of stuff. You get back to your desk and be like 30 things up there. I was one of those ridiculous people that would bring orange juice to these parties. You know, I had my secret stash of orange juice. And I had a friend back then, his name was Steve. I had a few friends, but he was one, and he was sitting next to me, and this was in the 3rd grade. And somebody came by and they were going to give him Coke, and I said, "I get some orange juice." And he looked at me and he goes, I'm gonna get the Coke." He goes, "Coke's more for parties than orange juice." I said, "Oh." And you know, that stuck with me my whole life. I think he was right. You know, you go to a party for a kid, Coca-Cola. That's what you want for a party. You don't want a little orange juice like you're, you know, waking up for breakfast on a school day. So anyway, we used to do that. And then the other thing, after, you know, in February, Valentine's Day, you'd get a collection of cards. Every kid would write a little card and put it on your table. So yeah, I remember one time I got touched a little emotionally there. In the 1st grade, that same kid Steve that I just mentioned, I knew who he was. I hung around with him a little bit, but we were never close, you know. We weren't like best friends. We were just kind of like acquaintances. And I had other friends that I was really close with, and we'd hang around at the railroad tracks after school, and we were close. But with him, he was like the outsider, but he was, you know, he was a friend, but more of an acquaintance. So I got all these Valentine cards, and they all were like, you know, to Nick from John. And then you'd look at the Valentine, it was a heart, or whatever it was. So I went home, and I had a bunch of these. I didn't read them all. And I went home, and I started looking at them. And the one that got me was the kid Steve. He had a puppy, and in the back it said, "To Nick, you are my best friend." And I felt like a little bit sad that I didn't consider him more of a friend than he considered me. I mean, he had me as a best friend, and I had him as somebody I knew at school. You know, we'd hang around a little bit together. And then when I saw that, we got even more, you know, our friendship got even more stronger. Just no more, just I got stronger. Too many superlatives, and started hanging around more, you know. But you know, then I went to another school and all that, and then I didn't see him again. And one day I was near a courthouse, and when I knew him, he was a twig. We were all twigs back then. And then fast forward about 16 years later, and I saw him from about 30 feet away. I go, "Oh, that's him." And he was chubby, big difference, you know, but the face, you know, was the same. And what I should have done, I should have went up there and I should have talked to him, but I didn't. And then ever since then, I've been looking for him. I've been looking. I've putting his name in the Google. Nothing pops up. Nothing pops up. It reminds me of a situation. I was looking for a friend of mine. I had a friend years ago, and I was looking for him. And when the internet was new, it wasn't as detailed. So I would put his name in, nothing would pop up, and I was looking for him for, a couple of decades. And then one day, I put the name in, it pops up information that matched what I knew about him. So I had an email, I sent the email, and I get a response, he's not here. And I felt like that scene in Rambo where he goes looking for Delmore Barry, and the lady says to John Rambo, he ain't here. And John Rambo says, oh, when will he be back? And she tells him that, he died. Anyway, so when I finally find my friend's family, I get a response, he's not here. I send another one, and eventually I get a response that my friend had died. And I was like, I spent all that time looking, and I'm late. I wish I found him a few years ago. But anyway, it was very sad, and and that was it. But I spent all that time looking, and at the end, I couldn't find him if I wanted to. So that's life. That's life. Yep. Yeah, I think the weather's going to start warming up a bit. We had a few days that were slightly cool. I mean, when I say that, it was like 73 degrees. Yep. So anyway, I highly recommend this. If you ever see a copy of this, pick it up. A lot of information in here. How to become a Eagle Scout. Look at that. How to become an Eagle Scout. Merit badges. Apparently, it's a big process. And then, right here, your parents show up, and the Scoutmaster guy is there, and all sorts of things. Then you go in front of the board. They review you for higher rank consideration. They're all dressed in it. It's kind of weird. You go in front of, I don't know if it would be that way today, if it's that way today. Today I picture the panel with a bunch of people with t-shirts, looking very casual, where in this picture, they look like businessmen or bankers or something, and they're reviewing you. They got the kid in the front there. The board of review for higher ranks consists of men who are prominent in your community. Men. These look like big shots, they look like business owners, bankers, lawyers. So you go in front of them and they judge you. So you got, I'm not a fan of the uniforms. A little bit, the McDonald's hat. I don't know, I would have a different look. How to make a fire. It's very hard. Very hard. That's not easy. Friction. I know it can be done, but difficult. How to row in a straight line. How to save a life. I mean, the intentions of this organization are great. It's just that a few, I don't even know, I might come up with a name, but a few individuals in positions of power screwed it up. They screwed it up, man. But, this is a really good organization, good organization. I don't know what's going on there. But they talk about everything in here. I mean, if you read this and you're able to absorb, memorize it, A lot of skill. A lot of skill in here. But like I said, this is from 1971. And it gave you, you know, purpose. It grounded you. So, yeah. But like I said, I always wanted to do this. But like, you know, for me, it was like, do I want to do it all the time? Or, you know, or do I want to do it every once in a while? And I think it would have been like, I'll do it every once in a while, but I don't want to be part of an organization where I have to do it. You know, then a lot of the enjoyment leaves when it becomes a chore. You know, but yeah. Nice. And I see these pictures. You know what I enjoy in Disneyland? That train ride that goes around, and I sit there and I enjoy it, especially when you're a little bit sleepy. You know, you're a little bit tired all day walking around. You want to take a little nap on the train. But I love it when we go into the Grand Canyon area of this train. You know, and you go in there, and it's very old-fashioned sounding. The guy talking, it sounds like it's the 1950s. And you go in there and you look, and because the Grand Canyon to me is one of my favorite places to visit. I love it when I'm there. Everything about it, you know. I love the coziness of the rooms, the food. You know, when you go into the El Travar there and you get a meal. I love the little stores they have on the side there. I love it when we go in the winter time and it's snowing out, and then you go inside and they have that roaring fire, and you sit in one of the vacant little couches, and you have the fire coming. It's awesome. So everything about it. I love hiking down. I have my little secret cave there that I go visit every time we go. I will, you know, leave my bride and my children behind, and then I will go and investigate my little secret location there. Sometimes I will cook in there. I mentioned in videos of the past that when I was a lot younger and I discovered that tunnel, I thought, hey, you know what? I don't have money for a hotel room here, but you know what I'm doing? I'm going to get food at the market. There's a supermarket up there, and then I'm going to get into this cave at night. I'm going to sleep in here, but I didn't prepare well. I should have had a pillow. I should have had a sleeping bag. Then maybe I could have slept. Or, you know, when I actually found that one night, I was when I did that whole plan, I went and bought beans and all this, you know, canned stuff, and I hid my bag in one of the trees on the edge of the canyon. And then at nighttime I was searching, where's the bag? And I finally found it. I climbed up the tree and I ate my beans, and then I said, you know what, I'm gonna go to the cave. I want to go, you know, there's a tunnel on the edge of the canyon, and I know nighttime makes it more dangerous, but when you're younger you don't think about that. So I went there and I eventually made it down, and I got into the cave, and all the way, you know, towards that area I was thinking, watch there be like a mountain lion in there that sleeps at night. I had no flashlight, totally unprepared. And I went in there and I felt around, and there was nothing in there but me. So I got on the floor, got on my back. I was trying to sleep. I got on my side. I could not sleep. I thought, you know, I thought I was going to eat my beans, have a little, you know, water, and then I was going to go in the cave and fall asleep and wake up 8 hours later, nice and refreshed. I couldn't sleep for even 30 seconds. I tried, but I couldn't. And then I got bored of sitting there, so I went back up top and I walked around and around and around, and then I would check. I had a Walkman back then, and it would be like 20 minutes later. I'm like, oh man, I've been walking a long time, only 20 minutes passed. And then I found a big tree by the railroad station, and I went and I was listening to my Walkman. I could hear LA from there at night, John and Ken show. And then I heard a door open up from the El Travar, the hotel, and somebody's coming down the back stairs, the metal stairs. They look like a fire escape. And I'm by the tree, and I'm thinking, watch this guy come by the tree now. And that's exactly where he came. He came by the tree, and he was taking a leak on the other side. And I kind of moved my foot, and it made a noise. And then I remember he paused, and I could see a shadow, and he was kind of looking around, like, where'd that come from? And then he finished, and I think I spooked him, and he ran up. He ran back to his room, and then I left from there. And I went all over the place that night, and the time would not go. And then all of a sudden, around, I don't know what time it was, 6:20, the sun was starting to come up. And I started to get drowsy because the sun was hitting me. It was nice and warm now, where the night was cold before. It started to get warm, and I fell asleep in the front there, you know, where that gift shop is. I was lying down on my back, and I fell asleep, and I passed out like, I went into a deep sleep for about an hour. And then I finally got up, and I saw everybody around me. They were all prepared for the day. They were dressed up nice clothing. They had the hot coffee steaming. Some had orange juice. It was not a party. It was just a regular orange juice. And I was like exhausted. I was exhausted. I got up to walk to the bathroom, and I felt like I was like, you know, deprived of sleep. You know, like maybe I hadn't slept for about a week. And I said, you know what? One day I'm going to come here, and I'm going to enjoy this place. I'm going to stay at this hotel. I'm going to take a shower in the morning. I'm going to have nice breakfast, and I'm going to do everything, you know, like a civilized person instead of like a caveman out here, like I do it now, back then. And eventually the day did come. I met my bride, and she civilized me. You know, prior to her, I was more like a, you know, rougher edge person. You know, I would sleep out. You know, if I had to do something in that kind of an environment, I would just rough it. I didn't have the money for a hotel, so I would just stay outside and just, you know, walk around all night because I wanted to be at the canyon. And then I met my bride, and she did it the more civilized way. We ended up, you know, going there when we first met. We rented a hotel room. We actually got real food. We had desserts, you know, all that stuff that you do to enjoy the trip 100 times more than the other way. And since then, we've been to the canyon, I don't know, I want to say countless times. We eventually had children. We introduced them to the canyon. They're fans of that too. We've been there with them many times. We were there with them when my wife was pregnant. We were there when my wife had given birth, and then every year after that. So, you know, we've been there quite a lot, and it is my favorite place. I love going there. But now we do it the better way, and that's all thanks to my wife. If it was up to me right now, I'd probably still be living in that cave, trying to get some sleep. How times change. Anyway, that's it for now. It's getting late, and I gotta be up early tomorrow. So that's it for now. Ciao.